The confusion almost everyone makes, but no one notices. Have you ever caught yourself saying things like, "I'm just really anxious," or "I'm such a mess"? Maybe you don't even realize it, but the way you define yourself often comes from a dangerous place. The belief that you are exactly the same as your thoughts. And that's where the confusion begins. Most of us grow up without ever hearing something simple, but powerful. You are not what you think. You are the one who observes your thoughts. It might sound subtle, but this one distinction changes everything. Think about it. Your mind produces thoughts all the time. Thoughts that come from what you've lived through, what you've heard, what you fear, what you desire. They show up like they have a life of their own. Sometimes they're positive, sometimes harsh, confusing, repetitive. And the most curious part? You don't choose which thoughts appear. They just come, out of nowhere. So why do you keep believing that every thought in your head is a true reflection of who you are? Imagine if every cloud that passed through the sky got to define what the sky is. A gray cloud doesn't make the sky sad. A dark cloud doesn't turn the sky into a storm. They just pass by. Just like thoughts. You are the sky. Thoughts are the clouds. But the human mind has this habit. It clings. And when a negative thought shows up, it grabs it, repeats it, analyzes it, believes it, sinks into it. A thought like, "I'm not good enough," pops up. And just like that, it feels like absolute truth. But it isn't. How many times have you thought something harsh about yourself, only to later realize it was just a reflection of a bad moment? Or worse, realized it wasn't even your voice, but someone else's, still echoing inside you? Exactly. So much of what you think about yourself didn't even originate with you. It came from childhood, from criticism you heard, from social standards, from unfair comparisons. But over time, you internalized it and started living as if it were true. That's why the first step to breaking out of this mental prison is to ask a simple question. Who is thinking this right now? When a painful thought shows up, just observe. Don't fight it. Just watch, like you're watching a movie. No judgment, no attachment. Just something passing through. That little space between you and the thought is powerful. It changes the way you deal with your emotions, your mistakes, your choices. Because once you realize you are not the thought itself, but the one observing it, you reclaim control. You break out of autopilot. Here's an example. Imagine you're having a hard day and the thought, "I'm useless," comes up. Instead of diving into that judgment, you pause and ask, why is my mind saying this right now? What emotion is behind this thought? Is this actually true, or just my feelings being loud? See the difference? You're no longer inside the thought. You're on the outside, looking at it. And the one who sees it can question it, can let it go. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with this small awareness, with this moment of space between you and what your mind produces. And here's something important. You'll start to realize most of your thoughts don't deserve the power you've been giving them. They come and go. They only gain strength when you hold on. You don't have to believe everything you think. That sentence might be one of the most life-changing truths you'll ever hear. You don't have to fight your thoughts. You just have to learn how to observe them. And the more you do, the more freedom you'll feel. Because thinking, "I'm a failure," doesn't make you one. Thinking, "no one loves me," doesn't make it real. Those are just thoughts, just emotions trying to speak. But deep down, you are so much more than that. You are the one who can pause, breathe, and see clearly. You are the one who can decide if a thought deserves space, or if it's time to let it go. And once that awareness takes root, everything starts to change. You become lighter, more present, less ruled by the mind, and more guided by your truth. And in the next part, that's exactly what we're going to explore. How to connect with that truth. When the mind speaks too loud. Have you ever noticed how your mind doesn't seem to have a pause button? It talks, analyzes, compares, criticizes, plans, remembers, worries, imagines. And the strangest thing? Even when you're completely exhausted, it just keeps going, as if it doesn't realize that you need rest. This constant mental activity creates a dangerous illusion, the belief that everything you think must be true, as if the simple fact that you're thinking something automatically makes it real. But here's a truth that could change the way you see yourself. Your mind speaks loudly, but it doesn't always speak accurately. How many times have you found yourself stuck in thoughts like, "Nobody likes me," or "I always mess everything up"? These thoughts, when repeated often enough, don't just hurt. They start shaping your identity. You begin to live as if you are the sum of your failures, fears, and doubts. That's why learning to observe your mind, instead of getting lost inside it, is so important. Think of the mind as a narrator. It's constantly telling stories. Some are based on facts, others, not so much. The problem begins when you accept every story as a true reflection of reality, when in fact, they're often just versions, and many times, distorted ones. This is where the act of observing becomes a powerful, freeing practice. When you pause and say to yourself, "This thought is telling me a story. Do I really need to believe it?" You're taking back the driver's seat. But here's something important. Observing isn't the same as repressing. It doesn't mean pretending the thought isn't there. It simply means recognizing it as part of the mind's flow, without letting it take control of the wheel. Imagine there's a radio playing in the background. It's there, sending out messages. Some songs are good, others not so much. You can listen, but you don't have to dance to every tune. You can say, "Ah, my mind is on self-criticism mode today. Interesting," and then move on with your day. That tiny distance between thought and action can change your entire inner experience, because that's when you realize that not every thought needs a reaction. Not every thought needs to be taken seriously. Sometimes it just needs to pass. And the more you train this observer's mindset, the more you strengthen your awareness. That deeper part of you that sees, feels, understands, but doesn't fully identify with anything. The part of you that is more than any label or emotion. Here's a real-life example. You're about to try something new. Maybe it's a project, a tough conversation, a personal challenge. Your mind jumps in. You're going to fail. This is going to be embarrassing. Better not even try. Instead of blindly following that script, you pause and observe. This is just fear talking. It always shows up when I'm about to grow. That's it. The moment you label the thought as a reaction, not a sentence, you take away its power. You begin to own your story. Now that doesn't mean you'll never think negative things again. It means that with practice, those thoughts lose their grip. You start recognizing them as background noise, not as truth. Yes, your mind can be loud, but you can choose to listen in silence. And that silence isn't empty. It's full of presence, full of wisdom, full of you. In fact, it's within that quiet, mindful space that you begin to discover who you really are. Not what your thoughts say, not what the world expects, but your essence. And that essence is so much more than any label you've ever accepted. When you start to look at yourself with the eyes of an observer, without judgment, without attachment, something starts to shift inside. You feel lighter, clearer, and you realize that so much of the suffering you carry came from believing the wrong thoughts for too long. Your mind can be your greatest ally. But first, you have to learn how to talk to it. Not follow it blindly, not obey without question, but pause, reflect, choose. Because yes, you can choose what to believe, and you can choose to let go of what hurts. And that choice, as simple as it may sound, is an act of freedom. In the next part, we'll explore how to turn this inner freedom into real action, so that observing your mind becomes more than just a concept. It becomes a living, breathing practice that transforms your everyday life. How to use awareness to change your reality. Now that you've started to understand that you are not your thoughts, but the one who observes them, a new possibility opens up. The chance to transform your reality through this awareness. It might sound deep, and it is. But it's also incredibly practical. Because living as the observer doesn't mean disconnecting from the world. It means learning how to engage with it with more presence, less reactivity, and much more freedom. Let's think about something familiar. A moment when you feel criticized. Maybe someone made a comment about your appearance, your career choice, or even your behavior. In moments like this, your mind quickly jumps in, often harshly. It says, "You're never good enough. See? They're right. You should have just stayed quiet." This wave of thoughts feels automatic, almost inevitable. But now, with what you've been learning, you can interrupt that pattern. You pause, you breathe, and you observe. Look at that. My mind is trying to protect me from pain by criticizing me. It learned this a long time ago, but I don't have to accept it as the truth. That conscious pause, that moment of mindful attention, is the exact point where reality begins to shift. Not because the world around you changed, but because you changed how you relate to it. Awareness gives you that choice. It creates an internal space, and in that space, you begin to cultivate something essential: self-responsibility without self-violence. That means you can recognize your mistakes, your patterns, your limitations, without tearing yourself apart for them. You observe with clarity and act with compassion. For example, you notice that every time you fail at something, your mind shouts, "You never get anything right." Instead of falling into that loop, you respond differently. "Yes, I made a mistake, but that doesn't define me. What can I learn from this?" That's the power of the observer. It doesn't erase the mistake. It transforms it into growth. And over time, this begins to create real change. You stop living on autopilot. You stop reacting to everything as if it's an emergency. You stop treating yourself like the enemy, and you begin to live with more ease. Because when you observe yourself, you realize that many of your harshest thoughts weren't even originally yours. They were learned, absorbed, repeated so many times that they started to feel like truth. But now, with this new perspective, you can ask yourself, what do I still want to carry? And what can I finally let go of? That choice changes everything. It changes how you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you face challenges, criticism, and the fear of failure. Because now you know, you can feel all of that without becoming any of it. This awareness also connects you to something even more precious, the present moment. Yes, because when you're observing, you're grounded in the now. You're not stuck in the past, reliving old wounds. You're not trapped in the future, worrying about what hasn't happened yet. You're here, feeling, choosing, present. And it's in that present state that real transformation happens. Not in the idea of change, but in the practice of it. In taking clearer, more conscious steps, even in tough moments. You start to realize, for example, that you don't have to react with anger every time you're frustrated. You can choose to pause before replying. You can choose to breathe instead of explode. You can choose to care for yourself without punishing yourself. These small choices are actually massive, because slowly they start to reorganize your inner world, replacing autopilot with conscious direction, replacing judgment with curiosity, replacing rigidity with flexibility. And no, this doesn't mean you'll never mess up again, or that you'll live in perfect peace all the time. It means that now you have tools, you have clarity, you have power. The power to decide what to believe, to care for your mental well-being, to free yourself from what holds you back, and to move through life with more lightness. In the next part, we'll talk about how to keep this practice alive, even in the middle of chaos, distractions, and the challenges of everyday life. Because observing is just the beginning, and living with awareness is a continuous journey. Keeping awareness alive. Even on difficult days, if by now you've started to see yourself differently, as someone who observes their thoughts instead of identifying with all of them, then you've already taken important steps. But now comes perhaps the biggest challenge: how to keep that awareness alive on the tough days. Because it's easy to stay clear-headed when everything is going well. But what about when life gets hard? When anxiety returns? When a conflict arises at work? Or that inner voice insists on criticizing you for everything? That's when the real practice begins. Imagine your mind as a radio that's always on. It plays songs all day long, some good, some confusing, and some you don't even remember choosing. The problem is, for a long time, you believed you had to dance to every song. But now you know you can listen without reacting. You can even change the station. However, this takes practice. And the training happens precisely on the most challenging days. In the rush of daily life, it's normal to get lost, to get irritated in traffic, to get anxious about an email, to feel pressured by others' expectations. And all this activates automatic thoughts. I can't handle this. Everything will go wrong. No one understands me. I'm a failure. In those moments, the tendency is to react as you always have. But if you're mindful, you'll notice this moment. You'll recognize that these thoughts aren't commands. They're just old scripts being repeated. And then you can stop. Breathe. Observe. Look at what my mind is doing. It's trying to protect me from pain using what it knows. But I don't have to follow this path. This space between thought and reaction is your greatest power. It's in this gap that freedom lives. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. On the contrary, it means developing a healthier relationship with your own emotional experience. Feeling everything, but without losing yourself in anything. And here comes an important point: self-compassion. Because even while trying to keep this awareness alive, you will slip. You will identify with negative thoughts. You will judge yourself. You will forget to observe. And that's okay. It's part of the process. The secret is not to punish yourself for it. When you realize you've fallen back into old patterns, instead of blaming yourself, acknowledge, okay, I lost focus for a moment. But now I'm here, aware again. And I can start over. This kindness toward yourself is essential. Without it, the practice becomes just another source of pressure. And awareness is not pressure. It's presence. It's care. You can also use small reminders throughout the day to bring yourself back to the now. A deeper breath, a phrase written on the wall, a 1-minute pause looking out the window, a touch on your chest like saying, I'm here. These simple gestures act as anchors. They help you remember who you are, not what you think. And little by little, this new way of relating to your mind grows stronger. It becomes a habit, a new way of living. You begin to realize you don't have to constantly chase acceptance anymore. You don't have to react to everything as if your life depends on it. You can breathe before responding. You can say no without guilt. You can fail without hating yourself. You reconnect with your humanity. And with that, you become stronger, lighter, more whole. And the most beautiful part? It overflows. When you learn to observe your own thoughts with more kindness, you start doing the same with others. Instead of judging, you understand. Instead of attacking, you listen. Instead of competing, you collaborate. Because you realize that all of us, deep down, are trying to deal with our own inner voices. We're all somehow trying to remember that we are more than what we think we are. This awareness isn't something you achieve all at once, it's built. sustained, and nourished every day with small but powerful choices. And you're already doing that now. By being here, reading, reflecting, breathing, you're already training this new perspective. In the next part, we'll close this cycle by talking about how to turn this practice into a lifestyle. A more conscious, calm, and authentic way of being in the world, making awareness a way of life. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Really. Because it shows that something inside you is ready for a quiet but powerful shift. Ready to stop identifying with everything that passes through your mind and finally live more lightly, more clearly, and more freely. After all, this is the essence of everything we've talked about so far. You are not what you think. You are the one who observes. But maybe now you're wondering, how do I keep this in practice? How do I make this awareness part of my daily life, even when things get tough? The answer isn't in magic formulas. It's in consistency, in repetition, in cultivating small habits that keep this awakened attention alive inside you. Because this isn't just an idea to reflect on and forget. It's a new way of living, a new relationship with your mind, and, by extension, with life. Think about someone learning to play guitar. In the beginning, everything seems hard. Fingers hurt, notes sound wrong, you want to give up. But over time, practicing every day, what once felt complicated becomes natural, automatic, fluid. It's the same with awareness. The more you practice observing your thoughts without clinging to them, the stronger this skill becomes, the freer you become. And here are some simple practices to help make this real, accessible, and lasting. Start your day in silence. Before grabbing your phone or checking the news, take a deep breath. Notice how you feel. What thoughts are present? Don't fight them. Just notice. That 1 minute of presence can already change the energy of your day. Name what you feel. Throughout the day, if something affects you, try putting into words what's happening inside. I'm angry. I'm anxious. I'm feeling small. Naming brings the thought out of the fog and into clarity. Naming is the first step to transformation. Use visual reminders. Put a phrase on your phone screen, a post-it on the wall, something that says, "You are here. Breathe." This brings you back, anchors you in the now, and helps you remember who the observer is. Breathe before reacting. If something hits you, a comment, a criticism, an unexpected event, take a moment's pause. Breathe. This breaks the automatic reaction cycle and opens space for a more conscious response. Practice compassion with yourself. Not every day will be perfect. You'll identify with thoughts. You'll fall into old traps. But that's not failure. That's practice. And every time you notice, you're training your freedom. Over time, you'll notice a subtle but profound change. Situations that once destabilized you will seem easier to handle. That inner chaos that seemed uncontrollable now feels more understandable. Critical voices still come, but you no longer obey all of them. You no longer define yourself by them. You start living with more clarity, balance, and presence. And the most beautiful part? This change in you doesn't only affect your life, it touches the people around you. Because when you start acting with more awareness, calm, and empathy, others feel it. They get inspired, and little by little, the world around you begins to reflect this new energy. You become a mirror of presence, of truth, of humanity. And it all begins with a simple choice. Stop believing you are what you think, and start living as the one who observes. That is the turning point. You don't need to control every thought. That would be impossible. But you can change your relationship with them. You can stop being a prisoner of your mind and become its guardian, its companion, its guide. And believe me, this change is liberating. Next time you feel your mind in chaos, everything out of place, and you don't know what to do, breathe. Return to the now. Remember, you are here, observing, And that alone is a miracle. Because the one who observes chooses, and the one who chooses with awareness creates a life that's truer, lighter, and more peaceful. So now tell me, are you ready to live this way? If something here made sense, touched you somehow, imagine how much good it can do for someone else. Like this video, share it with anyone who needs to hear this. And of course, subscribe to the channel to keep receiving reflections that help bring more clarity, calm, and awareness into your daily life. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Because sometimes, all we need is a new way to look inward. Thank you for being here. Your presence makes a difference.